into Writer Duet as either a Microsoft Word document or a PDF. I was just testing it out on both ways. And it will import the document. You will probably have to go through and clean up a few things in terms of formatting, but it's no big deal, and I can show everybody how to do that now.
Cool. Okay, so just I started recording,
Okay.
and then yeah, I guess we'll just see how this works.
Okay. Am I using Vivian script or?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Okay, great.
stuck in the middle.
Yes, yes. Okay, that's the one I thought I was going to use. Hooray. Okay, so let me share the screen. This is always fun when I don't quite know what I'm doing. Let's see. I'll just I'll go here. I think that will do it. This one. And share. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So you can make a free account with Writer Duet. If you use the free version, you can host 3 projects in your portfolio here. So, and I know that it seems like 3 projects is not a lot, but you still can export. So you can work on it here, export it into a PDF or whatever, save that wherever you want to save your projects on your own, whether it's your phone or in a draft in your email account or whatever. So there's still options there for you. But so if I was going to import Vivian's script, I would start it as a new project down here. And then I'll just put down. And then I go ahead and do that, open it up. Okay, so then what I would do is I would go over, I think it's here. It's one of these 2 things. So bear with me as we all muddle through together. Okay, it's up here. So it's up here. And let's see. There we go. Okay, so this first thing here is your file menu. So you do that. You go down to import. Pick from your computer. Stuck in the middle with you, right here. And then it will import, so I'm importing it from a PDF. And you can import it. Yeah, you can import it from a PDF. You can import it from a Microsoft Word document or a rich text document or whatever. So, okay, here is Vivian's script. And you want to go through, and so we see that some things got a little garbled, but that's not a problem. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go line by line and reformat everything. So we're going to go back to our menu here, and we're going to go to format right here. Okay, so for each line, this would be a character. So you hit there, and it formats everything for you. Same thing here. Go line by line. And these are the industry standard. So you don't have to worry about setting the margins yourself. This will automatically do it all for you. So let's see. So yeah, I mean, when you're importing it, it's not going to be perfect, but since these are pretty short scripts anyway, it won't be that big of a deal. So there we go there. There. You just go line by line. It's simple, it's easy peasy, and it gets you in industry standard really quickly. And you don't have to be concerned about, is this the right format? It does it all for you.
Is there any, I mean, I guess, are there any like tricky things, or like, is there kind of like almost like a reference or a style guide that you could like, because I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the things that like trip people up, like with intercutting between scenes, or like,
Yeah, there's all sorts of, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it just comes from practice.
Mhm.
There's a couple of reference books out there online. I have them in regular book form, but I think let me if I can come back to that, I'll do some digging around for you guys and see if I can find any free resources out there online. So you wouldn't have to spend money to buy one of the books that are references. But yeah, like this will do it all for. But in terms of like how do I format a dream sequence? How do I format a cross-cutting thing like that kind of thing? Yeah, those can be tricky. But the good news is the trickier it is, there's probably more than one way to do it. So,
Like there's a right way necessarily.
right. I mean, I've seen, for example, I've seen flashbacks done a couple different ways, and it's not one of those things where if you're submitting it to a competition and the judges are looking at it and they're like, that's not the proper way to do a flashback, I'm totally throwing the script in the trash. No, it doesn't work like that. As long as it's not too completely out there, they're not gonna ding you for it. Whereas if your dialogue is not correctly justified, if it's center justified instead of left hand justified, then yeah, that's something that's going to raise flags for them, and they're probably not going to consider your script as seriously because it's not formatted properly. So yeah, the weirder it is in terms of a thing, like flashbacks used to give me hives. Montages, the same thing. It's like I would drive myself nuts because I wasn't sure what's the proper way to format a montage. But again, it's all good as long as it's clear enough on the page to the reader. Those sequences are given a little bit of a more freer reign, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, as long as it's like readable and it gets your idea
Yeah,
across, right?
yeah, for sure. And and it's funny too because I worked in the Warner Brothers story department, and I worked in their script processing department, and their script processing department was all about format. That's what I did for 3 years, is that I worked on scripts and made sure they were in the right format. And that's where I learned where it's like, especially when it comes to like big budget action movies, those writers will format it every which way they want to, and then it would go through our department and we would reformat it to be the proper format. I feel like I'm saying the word format so many times.
Like format. Um, well, I guess in that sense, then, since that's kind of, I mean, that's part of, I guess, one of your expertises. What are the maybe top three things that you would say, or maybe top five, like things to watch out for as like a beginning to make sure, like the must haves, like you need to have, your dialogue left justified.
Yeah. Yeah. That's number one, is always have your dialogue left hand justified. So this is what I'm talking about when I say left hand justified. It's not center. I mean, it looks like it's center on the page, but because we're in the official dialogue thing here, if you're writing your script in Microsoft Word, it's obvious, which is why I'm recommending that you can write the script in Microsoft Word, but then just run it through Writer Duet, reformat it the correct way, and then export it. Or if you can, it would be preferable to just write the project completely in Writer Duet and then export it to PDF when you're done. But so I definitely get your margins right on the dialogue. What we've seen so much of the time is that writers will try to cheat the margin over here. So they will try to have their dialogue lines go way over here and then starting the new line here. So try not to cheat the margins that way. You want to, let's see, so this could be broken into more than one paragraph. When readers look and they see a paragraph like this, they're a little wincy about it, just because an action paragraph shouldn't be any longer than 3 lines. So a very simple way to fix this is Simone runs down the hallway, she reaches them just in time, and to stop them with one hand. Okay, so that's basically one movement. So you could do that, right? Now all of a sudden it reads much cleaner. because that's the idea, is that we want to make sure the page reads cleanly and that there's not huge blocks of text, because when a reader sees a huge block of text, whether it's a dialogue, like maybe it's a long monologue or whatever, or it's a long action paragraph, their eyes just start to glaze over and you risk losing their attention. So if you break these things up, they will be able to read it easier. So she enters and sees Joe lounging in the corner. She ignores her and turns back to the door. Okay, so then I would do that. And bam, this reads so much cleaner now because I've also divided it up into specific actions. So here, the first action is Simone entering the elevator or running down the hallway, and then they're going into the elevator, and then the elevator stops. So this reads way cleaner, and that's kind of what the readers are interested in. This right here is known as a hanging chad because it's just one word that makes a new line. So I would also try to edit it down some. Let me see. Simone runs down the hallway towards Libby. She reaches them just in time to stop them. So
You're saying that they don't like that when there's only one word in a line?
I know it's a picky thing. It's not, they're not going to throw your script out, but it does take up page count. So if you're trying to make your pages shorter, suppose you have, suppose you're trying to submit to a competition and it has to be 6 pages. And if you're like 6 pages and then spilling onto page 7, you can go back through your script and find these little things, fix them here and move everything up, and then get your script back on 6 pages instead of spilling over into 7. So here I would probably, let's see if this does it. There, see? Now it reads much cleaner. So here I wouldn't worry about it because it's more than one word. It's more than one word on this line, so it's fine. So, and here I wouldn't worry about it because it's dialogue, and sometimes people just talk like that, and I'm not too concerned about that. So,
Figures on action.
yeah, mostly on action is where I would focus that type of technique. I wouldn't worry about it in dialogue, but definitely in action. So, this is sometimes people will take off the continued, and that's, no, let's see if I can do that here or not, but I wouldn't worry about it too much.
I use continue because if you're talking about like interrupting someone and they need to know that, you're still continuing the dialogue. And
well, if we did take, let's see what happens if we removed it completely. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to automatically format it, but so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I personally take the continueds out because I think it's automatically implied when you're reading it on the page. Simone is talking, and then Joe pulls back and looks at her, and then we go back to Simone. We would still understand that it's Simone talking and continuing her previous thought without having this continued here. But if you're working with a formatting program like this one where it's going to automatically do it for you, it's fine. So
Like for that, would you say maybe if it's across a page or something like that?
yeah, I would definitely do it if it's across a page. But again, a lot of programs like Final Draft will automatically format that for you. So like here, if I just do, yeah, okay, see how it automatically does it? It does the more and continued down here. So that'll be an automatic in the program. Final Draft does that too. So you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, it's really easy to do. And it's just, I don't want you guys having any of your submissions getting thrown out for something that's very easy to correct is all. So let's get you in the best shape possible to.
you're talking about in just competitions?
For competitions, but also for if you're submitting your script for any production company or any studio, you want to present yourself as a professional writer, and professional writers have professionally formatted scripts. So it's all, you know, whenever you want to submit your script to anyone who is considering it for any reason, whether it's a competition or a writing sample or a potential option or sale. But yeah, so it's just very easy to go through and just bam, bam, bam. And this is 3 lines, so that's good. And yeah, just go through and here it's, this is also something that you always want to make sure, just grammar purposes. So in this case, you would take out the apostrophe. So for you always want to look through your script and make sure that your its and your its, so your ITS and your IT apostrophe S, that you're using them in the right way. Another one is there, and there. In fact,
Oh, I got that one down. Yeah.
What?
It's what's the difference? I got the theirs down. The there, that's easy for me. I know that one. But the it's and what? It's when it is.
So if this is essentially, if we left it like that, it would be reading, it is journey. So we take out the apostrophe to indicate the possessive.
Okay, gotcha.
So another one that a lot of people get wrong. In fact, somebody sent me a birthday card on. Is this going to work out right? Can you read that, or is it backwards?
Oh no, yeah, we see it.
Oh,
Well, you know what? I see there, but so there, the zombies.
I had that
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that one down.
There.
So it's the 3 uses of there, and there.
Yeah.
They're going to get us.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So that's just another, so make sure you've got your there, and there's in the proper way, and your its and your IT apostrophe S's in the right way. And I would say that was the second big thing. The first thing is make sure your dialogue is justified correctly. Number two is make sure your action paragraphs are 3 lines long. And then number 3 would be correct uses of grammar rules like there, and there. So, yeah.
I noticed too, like in this script, Vivian uses that slash there. Would you?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and it's funny because I get tripped up on this one too. But let's see. Okay. So the differences between ... and the difference between that and ... So you're either going to use one or the other. It's either going to be a double dash or it's going to be 3 dots. The difference between the two is that if it's this way, then Simone is just trailing off without anybody interrupting her. So the actor way to deliver this line is, this is ridiculous, I'm going to call. And then she remembers that there's no signal. But if for some reason Joe was going to interrupt her, then it would look like this.
Oh, because I'm reading online, I thought they said there was no difference between the two. Like that, we use a dash. Like I know I use that one in dialogue. Like if someone interrupts, I use those 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just again, it's.
Yeah, I use a dot for like if someone does something, and how do you say it? Like they do something, and then you don't want to. You're not writing down every single step, so you just put that instead. Like if they're going somewhere, like going to another room, you're gonna cut to another scene.
Oh, so you're talking about like instead of this.
Like saying someone is walking towards an area, but you're not gonna write down every footstep, and then out the dots, and then cut to the next scene. Like say someone's walking to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, are you talking about in action or in dialogue?
In action, like this person begins walking, and then you put the dot, and then cut to next scene. Because you're not gonna put, they walked. You're not gonna put down every single step or how long they walked, and then you're gonna cut to the next scene, and then
Okay.
you're gonna go back
I
to
think, okay, I think I understand what you're saying. If it's action only, you don't have to. So, for example, Simone, even though this isn't specific to the scene, but Simone walks down the hall, and then we cut to. There we go. Cut to. Then interior lobby night. So you don't have to make it look like that. And you don't have to make it look like that either. All you have to do is do that. That's it. Does that answer your question?
Okay, how far is he walking down the hallway, or like, I don't know if that. Never mind, I don't know. I have to write it first, and then I'll check back. But I know that. I don't know if that's what I'm talking about, because I know that never mind. I'll wait. I'll hold it, because I know when I've been reading scripts, I see that too. Like in action, when they do, like they'll have the dots. They'll have the dots when they're doing that. Like if someone, like if action is interrupted by, also if action is interrupted by dialogue, use the dot.
Yeah, I would advocate for not doing any, if it's action description only, I wouldn't advocate using that or that. I would just use plain old periods. That's it. And then if they're being interrupted by something, you just start typing the interruption, you know? Or you could say, I mean, depending on your scenario, or, you know, that kind of thing.
And not to get too far off on this, but then would you do like Joe? I don't know what that's called. You know how sometimes like under a character there's like a little parens. I guess is it just parens where if it's like interrupts or screaming or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you could do it that way, and that would certainly get Simone to stop. Usually, when it comes to parentheses, what I think you don't have to do is if this is the line, you don't need the parentheses because no, not that. Okay, so because your exclamation point is doing the work of the parentheses here. So if the parentheses is commenting on this, like on the tone of the dialogue that's already indicated, you don't need this at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would not. Why is it doing that?
Is that a super overused thing, do you think? Or like missing?
I mean, I see a lot of new writers using it, and it's something that we have to, you know, point out to them. What
like,
you can,
parentheses, I can't see that. Sorry, it's my screen is small. You're saying don't use or do?
okay, so you wouldn't have to use this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm saying that you don't have to put the parentheses in here because you already have an explanation.
Like, what if like it doesn't that distinguish though the difference? Like, how does someone reading it? How can they be 100% for sure that you're not that's not what someone is saying? Like, that's not the dialogue. How can they, you know how no 100% that that's not the dialogue that someone is actually saying that?
When the actor sees this exclamation point right here, he's going to know that he needs to deliver it screaming, shouting, that kind of thing. So
so like maybe you would use a parentheses, like, I don't know if it was like sarcastically or something.
exactly. That's exactly right. You can either use the parentheses to indicate if it's not clear how the line is supposed to be delivered, so like that, right? So then it seems like it's a furious whisper. So that's why you would put the parentheses there. I almost want to say it's like it can be used ironically, but not necessary. I've also seen people do this, And so that is that means that, you know, the actor is taking a pause before delivering the line. So you can do that if that's what you want. Or
I thought you
shorter.
put
Sorry?
the beat.
A beat, yes, exactly. You can also put a beat in there too.
But to not let your original point be lost, the ellipsis, the three dots, is like if it's like this is ridiculous, I'm gonna, and it's like trailing, that's ellipsis dots, and
Right.
then the two dashes is getting cut off, and you would use the dashes at the end of whoever's getting cut off, and then at the beginning of the person who's doing the cutting off.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And so like, which is, oh, I'm like, trying to move the screen that I do not possess.
Do you want me to give it back to you?
No, I'm good. I'm like, but yeah, because that's basically what is happening in this scene, right? Because Joe cuts off Simone. Is that right, Vivian?
Sorry, what?
Oh no, you're good. So it's like, this is ridiculous, I'm gonna call, and then Joe is like, that's not gonna work, or whatever she says now.
No, it's more like, you know, when you're like kind of mad at somebody and you're trying to make an argument, and then halfway through the argument you're making, you realize you don't actually have a point. Like you're like, I'm gonna call. You can't call anybody.
So it is trailing off then.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like cutting yourself off.
If you're cutting yourself off. If you're cutting yourself off, then it's an ellipses, because cutting yourself off and trailing off are basically the same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, then it's like, oh, okay, there's a look or something, like she notices that there's a look from Joe, like who are you gonna call? She's like,
Ghostbusters.
yeah.
Sorry, I can't help it.
I did that
giant.
to myself.
I'm a giant dork. Sorry. But so yeah, we can just go through. Does this make sense to you, Vivian, what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And is there any length, like with dialogue, is there any kind of like rule of thumb? Like that's nice to know about like the action, that it's good to break it up into chunks of 3. And like what you said makes sense about like readability and like dividing the action, the segments of the action. Is there anything that you would like advise on like length of dialogue blocks?
I would say, let's see, like, okay, I'm just looking at this one particular line because it's highlighted. There's no hard and fast rule like with the action paragraphs. So what you just don't want to see is that you don't want to see a line of dialogue or a chunk of dialogue that takes like half a page. You know, that's just like one long monologue. So this is fine, and these are all fine with this. Yeah, so I can. Yeah, so like I'm not. This is the right length. It's not too long and not too short, really. So, but if it like went on to down here, like if it was this long, then yeah, I'd be like, okay, we got to break this up somehow by either by an action line or another character commenting or something like that. But this is the right length. So.
Unless it's meant to be like intentionally ridiculous or something, or it's like in the middle of the.
True. I mean,
it's artistic, whatever. But
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, there are certainly times where a character is doing a monologue that does go on for a while, but it's almost like you have to earn that right, if that makes sense. Like and when I say you have to earn it, it means that you have to set up the story in such a way to where you understand why the character is now making a very long monologue. And whether that's, you know, like if you know, like a classic scenario is the child coming to sit by the dying parent's bedside and is like finally like saying things to the dying parent that they've always wanted to tell that parent but has not had, you know. So probably in your first draft it is going to be a long huge monologue, but maybe in subsequent drafts you can go back and
There'll be something
things.
usually to break it up, right? Like the
Exactly.
machine beeps and like they breathe their last breath or whatever.
Yep.
Like parent
Yep.
groans, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
And then
So,
like little stuff here, right, that you got to just watch out. So and if is capitalized, it's the same IT''s thing going on there.
yeah. Yeah, so you want to capitalize news here. And it may have been capitalized before and maybe just got lost in the but so it won't work, you know, that stop pacing, you're making me. Okay, so here we've got a little bit longer. So what I would do is probably, let me see. I was doing the last word and just stands there. Okay, so let's see if we can shorten this to 3 lines. So how about, let's see if I can still preserve the intent of what Vivian wants to do in fewer words. There, okay. So now I've made it 3 lines and it's still preserving the intent of what Vivian wants these characters to do. So, and there are plenty of times, like I just finished a draft a couple weeks ago and I was trying to get it down. I had that same scenario that I was describing there. It was 108 pages, but the 108th page had only like this much text on the page. So I'm like, I can totally find a place to shorten things within the body of the script that would shorten everything and then stick that up. Because you just don't want to necessarily waste page count like that, right? You all want to make scripts shorter. People would rather read 107 page than 108 page. They just so. Oh, great! Everybody would like to see that my internet connection is unstable. So yeah, you can just go through. I was gonna see. Yeah. Okay, so this is a common thing where this is actually should be an action line. And I say that because the rule of parentheses is that it should be, again, related to the dialogue. So what it would normally look like is back to Simone. And the reason why we're using ellipses there is because she's trailing off by doing this. So she's interrupting herself.
She's like struggling to find a word. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, exactly. So yeah. Is this making sense to everyone? Are there questions?
I don't know, when you're talking about a page count, I'm like, what if every single part is critical to the story to make sense and you happen to land on that 108th page? Like, I don't feel like it messed up the story if you minimize too much of the story just to make it fit, and now something won't make sense anymore.
Well, I think it's interesting because I know the tendency for the writer is to want to make sure that you direct on the page and to make sure that, as you say, everything is critical. But I think the more you start working with it, I think you'll be surprised at what you think is critical probably isn't. It's more about not over describing every little thing, but just using the fewest amount of words to convey the action. There was an arm behind Kristen. Exactly. Talk about a horror movie.
No, it was creepy too because there was just like a spooky little baby right here. Arm.
Yeah.
Very spooky. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But no, so Aisha, what I'm saying is that what you may think is critical probably may not be as critical as you think it is. And you can probably get away with describing it less and still having your intent come across. It is an art form for sure, so that's why you got to keep working on it. So, but yeah. And, all right, so
And then
yeah, so
with that bigger block of text, right? You could, if you wanted to break it up, like insert that Simone starts hyperventilating, like somewhere in the middle, I guess. If you wanted to, or is that?
yeah, so let's see. She's not having a baby with me. She's having a baby for me. What about the baby? It's gonna be born. I'm not gonna be there.
Maybe it's not that long.
Yeah, I mean, it's not horrible. It's not egregious. So I could, if I was reading it as a reader, and I'd be like,
It's okay, guys. You can say it.
No, the only thing I was going to say is because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look for redundancies in the dialogue, even though I know that us as people, especially when we're getting emotional, we do tend to repeat ourselves. But what I would, if I was going to shorten this, I would probably do something like, and baby's going to be born and I'm not going to be there. I'm going to miss a crucial bonding moment. I understand what you're doing here. Miss a crucial bonding moment. We won't be able to bond. They'll grow up hating me because I wasn't there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if I was going to break it up, I'd break it here maybe. And then Simone she wouldn't start hyperventilating, but whatever the first things are that lead to starts to, I mean, she could start to cry or starts to tear up, that kind of thing. But again, it's not crucial. It's not crucial to break it up. But if I was going to break it up, that's probably what I would do. Yeah. So,
That's a good like analysis too for people to do, right? Like whenever they see a text block or a dialogue block that's like maybe like borderline long, to look and see if there's things that are redundant and to think about like, oh, is every piece of this necessary?
Yeah. And again, I understand what you're going for, Vivian, because she's getting herself worked up. And so that's why the lines have an escalation here, which is good. So I totally understand and what you're doing, which is that it almost has to go this long in order for her to get more and more worked up. So I get it. But
So producers just really don't like reading, huh?
well, it's, if you look at it from the producer's perspective, a producer is reading how many scripts a day, how many scripts a week, how many scripts a month. especially now, because everything that I'm hearing from the, now that we're all under lockdown and stay at home, everybody who is a buyer is getting slammed with scripts because they're all at home, So I think an average producer, I'm thinking about the folks at Warner Brothers, our creative executives, I think we're getting submitted, or I would say the creative executives of Warner Brothers are sending down to the story department, meaning they got a script that they need to have covered. And they're sending in an excess of about, anywhere from 5 to 10, about 5 to 7 a day, right? So if that's 5 to 7 a day times 5, so that's 25 to 35 scripts a week. If you're the person reading those scripts, you don't want to, you want to make it easier on the reader as possible. So it's not a matter of that they don't like reading, it's just that their volume is so high. How's that? So you want to make it as easy on them as possible by making sure that your script is easy on the page to read and that it flows fast. So that it's easy to read, that, people are reading it and they're understanding it quickly.
And I'm going to put a pin in something in the chat, because that would be great.
Yeah.
I don't think that everybody knows what coverage is or how it's used.
Okay.
So it might be cool if you could talk a little bit about that and like what
Absolutely.
it is. And
Yes.
And also, I mean, is there potential, like, because you're saying like people are getting slammed with scripts right now, is there perhaps an increased need for people who know how to read coverage?
So, okay, let me back it up. When I say coverage is essentially a book report on what your script is about. So it's a summary. So a studio executive will submit, okay, let me back it up even further. The people, the creative executives at Warner Brothers or Paramount or Sony or any studio, they will get submitted scripts all day long. And that comes from agents, that comes from managers, that comes from production companies or producers. So they get the script and then they send it down to their story department. And I can talk specifically about Warner Brothers because that's where I've spent the past 9 to 10 years at. So they will send the script down to the story department. The story department has, I want to say anywhere between 10 to 13 what we call readers on staff. And so these are people whose full-time job is to read scripts. That's what they do for 40 hours a week. And so if it's a submission, then these readers will get the script, they'll read it, and they'll prepare coverage, which is a book report on what the script is about. And coverage is essentially a document that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages, but again, shorter is better, about what the script's about. So they'll divide it into categories. So the script is a romantic comedy and it's this many pages long. And here's the log line for it that I developed from reading the script. And then half of the coverage is a summary of what the script is about. And then the other half of the coverage is their comments about whether they think that this would be a good script for Warner Brothers to buy or not. And then at the end of the coverage, they'll have a recommendation. And at least in terms of what Warner Brothers does, the recommendations come in a couple of different ways. So it can be pass on the writer, pass on the project, which means they are passing on both the idea of, should we buy this project? Pass means no. And then pass on the writer, should we consider this writer for other projects? So if they're passing on the writer, that means no, they don't think the writer would be good for a rewrite of any of the other Warner Brother projects. Or if this writer has other scripts, do we want to see any other scripts based on this particular script? No, we do not. That's what a pass means, right? So consider can be, maybe. It's kind of like if a pass is a no and a yes is a yes and a consider is a maybe. So consider the project means go back up to the creative executive and see if, you know, maybe he wants to meet with the writer to discuss it further. Maybe he wants to get more opinions on it by maybe passing the script around to other creative executives to see what their thoughts are, to get a second opinion possibly. And then consider the writer means that, you know, maybe consider the writer for other rewrite gigs or something like that. Maybe take a meeting with the writer, see what else the writer has already written that they may want to take a look at. And then obviously a yes or a yes means, yes, we should buy this project. Yes, we should consider the writer. And though I can tell you that in the 4.5 years that I was in the story department, part of my job was to assign the coverage out to the readers and to process the coverage as it came back in. To get a yes was extremely rare. And I think I saw it maybe like under 10 times. So anywhere from like 10 times spread out across 4 years, however that math breaks down. But so it was rare to see that. What was more common, well, you know, a lot of times it was a pass, but also you could get a no on your project, you could get a pass on your project, but a consider on the writer. And that's great, because that means we don't want to buy this particular script, but we think you're a really good writer. What else do you have that you would want us to look at? Maybe there's something else you have in your repertoire, in your portfolio, that would be of interest for us to take a look at. And the other thing to keep in mind too is with Warner Brothers, you know, any big studio, there's a lot of reasons that they could say no that have nothing to do with how you write, right? Maybe the budget's too big, or maybe it's a horror movie and Warner Brothers doesn't necessarily want to do horror movies right now, so they may pass it off to their sister company New Line, which is known for doing a lot of horror movies. So there's a bunch of reasons why they would pass on your project and still consider you. What is also somewhat rare is to see a yes on the project but a no on the writer, which basically means we liked this script and we think there's a really good idea here, but we don't think this writer can take it to the next level. So they may buy the script and pay the writer money and then hire another rewriter or another writer to come in and rewrite it. So yeah, that's essentially what coverage is and what readers do. And in terms of how do you get a job as a reader, okay. So at the studio level, all of those readers are in a union. So, and that, in order for Warner Brothers to hire a new reader, they have to go through the union first and hire one of the readers that's already signed up with that union. And in order to get into the union, you kind of.
Is that a writer's guild position?
It's not. It sounds like it should be, but it's not. It's weird. The studio readers are affiliated with the Editors Guild. I don't know why. It's so bizarre. I mean, maybe because they started off as like story editors, like back in the 30s or something like that. But so yeah, they are affiliated with the Editors Guild, and it's interesting because in order to get into the union, you have to amass a certain amount of hours with a non-union affiliated company. So like, for example, Warner Brothers had hired, what was it? Their Netflix, now I could be wrong. In fact, I'll make some calls about it. Netflix right now does not use union readers. So the people that are reading for Netflix are amassing the amount of hours that they need in order to get into the union. And in terms of how many hours do you need before that might be getting too far in the weeds. It's a lot. But so you may, if you were interested in a career as a reader, you would probably want to start lower on the level and try to read for a production company. It is really, really difficult. It's almost as difficult to get a reading position that pays a full-time wage. It's almost as it's as difficult to get one of those jobs as it is to sell a script. I mean, it's just because the production companies don't want to pay a reader. If they want coverage on their scripts, they're going to get the assistants to do it, or they're going to get the interns to do it. That's just the nature of the business. But it's not to say that they don't. It's just to say that that kind of job is really, really tough.
That's interesting. I had just heard, like, I mean, I don't know hardly anything. Clearly, I don't know anything about that. But yeah, I'd heard like, oh, that's a thing that people do, and it's totally like casual. But I had no idea that was a union position.
Oh yeah, well, for the studios, it is a union position. Now, for the production companies, like my brain just blanked on because I've been working on the studio level for so long. Let's see, Screen Gems is a studio. Oh, Blumhouse. Okay, let's say Blumhouse, because Blumhouse is a production company, right? They have a producing deal with Universal. So they're the ones that do all the Purge movies. They did Get Out. They do a lot of genre stuff, but they are not a studio. So it's very possible that Blumhouse will have non-union readers. I'm not sure how they make their coverage happen. But Netflix, I know, just because of the large volume of stuff that Netflix is doing, they have to have readers on staff. Also, that it's our readers, our studio readers, are not only are reading submissions, but they're also doing project coverage. So when a script is bought and is going through the development process, one reader will be assigned to it. So at Warner Brothers, let's just say, what was something we released? Scoob. So Scoob is coming out on digital this upcoming Friday. So, and that is a project that's been hanging around for a long. All of the Hanna-Barbera projects have gone through so many different writers. The Jetsons is another one. It's been in development for years and years and years. And what the studio does is they will assign one reader to that project, and that one reader will read every single draft that comes in. And you do that because you want to have a consistent opinion. You want to have one reader who has read all of the drafts, who knows what the differences between the drafts are, and they'll do a project comparison. So if they have been working on a Jetsons draft and they hired a new writer, and a new writer comes in and does a whole page one rewrite, you want to have the same reader who had read all of the other drafts and then will read this new draft, so that he can see, okay, they went this way with this character and took it in this direction, and I think it works, or I think the other guy's draft was better. So you have one reader who does project coverage. And yeah, so there's all sorts of different types of coverage that comes in.
Oh, that's super interesting. So
is it though?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, you're like, is it? Is it really? Could it be more interesting?
I was in that environment for so long. By the time I got out of it, I was like, this is not interesting to anybody. This is boring.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I will say. It's like every time you get a new script, every time you get a new submission, everybody has the same reaction, which is that you open page one and you're just like, please let this be a good script. Please. I've read so much bad stuff, it's like, I just want to read a good story. So that's what you have going for you, is that every reader does the same thing when they open a script, is that they send up a tiny little prayer. Please let this be good. It's not like people are opening the script wanting to hate it. Nobody does that. No, they want to read something good. So it's up to you as the writer to deliver them something good.
Cool. No, thank you for that. That's very interesting. And it's, it's just like learning a little bit about a corner of things that, hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so that was definitely a digression, but thank you.
No worries. No worries at all. I can keep going on here if that's helpful.
Curious. If you write a successful script and it gets sold and you make another movie, you have to go through that whole process again, or is there like a way you can skip some of the because they know you and you've written for a studio, do you have to still go through the same process again, or can you
So yeah, I mean, if you sell a script to a studio and you like working with them and they like working with you, that means you develop a good working relationship with them. So the next time you have another script, you can take it to Warner Brothers, you can take it to any of the other studios, because there is something to be said for leverage, which is that if you've sold something to Warner Brothers and you've got a completely different script and a completely different story, you're going to want to take it out to everybody. You don't have to remain exclusive to Warner Brothers.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if I don't want to have to go through that whole process again and have my script read by someone who's reading a whole bunch of other scripts, and I've already written a successful script and it was sold, can I just go straight to a producer myself or with my agent, or without having to wait for them to read my script with the 100 other scripts or whatever?
Yeah, so your script is still going to get submitted to the studio, but and it's still going to be submitted for coverage. But what you do have going for you is if you've already sold something to the studio and they like you, then your reputation is going to precede you. So you're still going to have to get your script covered. It's still going to be submitted to the studio, but it's going to be attached to, here's Aisha. Remember how we loved her other script. Remember how we liked working with her. She's got a brand new script. I'm really excited about it. Let's get it covered. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and then sorry to be on the negative side of things, but I did have a question of if you get a pass associated with your name as a writer, like how long does that take necessarily to, if they're passing on you as a writer, is that like, okay, well, we're not going to look at anything from them for the next year, or?
Oh, no. It doesn't, it's not the kiss of death. It's not the kiss of death.
Question.
No, I think it really, what it is it depends on, well, no, I shouldn't say that. Let me think of how to phrase. It's what they do is we have a giant database, and all of the coverage that comes in is filed in the database, so that if you wanted to, you could go into the database and type in Aisha's name or Vivian's name and see how many scripts you guys have submitted to the studio. And you can look and see what the coverage is like on that. Now, if you have negative coverage attached to it, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to read the newest script that you submitted to the studio. Again, it might be a bit of a reputation thing, where if the coverage came back extraordinarily bad. But I will say that studio executives don't really look up prior coverage before they start reading another writer's script. They just don't have the time. But they will most likely ask for it after they've read it. So it's like, oh, okay, so I just finished this one script about Aisha. I have some thoughts. Has she submitted anything else to the studio? So then they would, but it's rare that they would look up if they don't already have a good opinion of you based on their previous working relationship with you, they're not necessarily going to check the database to see what else you've submitted. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll check to see if the script you've submitted has been submitted before, and do we already have coverage on it? Because we have about 10 to 12 creative executives working, and if the producer has your script and submits it to, say, Joshua, and Joshua sends it down for coverage comes back as a pass, so Joshua passes on your script to the producer, your producer might try to target another creative executive and pretend that he didn't submit it to Joshua. So a lot of times we'll try and check to make sure we haven't already covered the script. If it's the same exact script, then we wouldn't do coverage on it again, because that's just a waste of resources.
Yeah.
So if another creative executive gets your script, sends it down for coverage, the story department checks for coverage. If we already have it and it's the same draft, then we'll just send it back up to the creative executive and be like, yep, we've already covered this one.
So they might check if the story, like if it's the same script but a different, like if they might have switched a few things around with the story, like if they might have made the story, better, because you could make a story better even if they don't like it. Like you take it back and you're like, okay, this didn't turn out right, so now I'm gonna, try the story in a different way or different, like alternate ending or middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it's a new draft, they will definitely do coverage on it again. But what they will also try to do is they'll try and submit the new draft to the same reader. And so that way that reader can see, like, oh yeah, I remember the script from last year. Okay, here's what she did different. It either makes the...
They will look at it again.
What?
So they will look at it again?
If it's a brand new draft, yeah.
How do they know if it's a brand new draft?
Normally on the title page, you'll put down either a date. You wouldn't put down like, oh, this is the 11th draft or whatever, but you would put down the date that you had finished writing it. And that's what we use. So if it was sorry?
Right now, like if I finish my first script, am I supposed to put down the date that I finished it?
That's normally what it is, but you want to be careful that, so for example, I just finished a script. It's the 11th draft, but I'm not putting that on the cover page. I'm putting down the date that I finished it, which was April 20th of 2020. But so I also made sure that it was finished, and I wasn't going to tweak it anymore, especially since I was submitting it to the Austin Screenplay Film Festival, and also Final Draft and Script Pipeline and Screencraft and all those things. So if I'm submitting it out, I don't want to keep tweaking it. So I made sure that I had done a spell check on it, that I had done a grammar check on it to make sure that I had gotten all of those little tiny things done. And I had gotten all of my notes back from my friends and implemented them all. So yeah, that is essentially, this is that draft date, and this is the date I'm
finished. All your friends know how to read scripts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all fellow writers. I have a writers group. There's about 6 or 7 of us. We meet once every month, and we all read each other's stuff.
How did you find out about them?
This particular group I was in was a referral based. I was working with a screenwriting coach. She knew I was looking, because I had another writers group that I was in that I just didn't like very much. And when I say I didn't like them, what didn't I like about them? I just didn't find their comments helpful. I think I was working on a different skill level than they were. And I wanted to be in a room with a higher screenwriting skill level.
Like, how do you make that choice and making sure you're not choosing people that are going to steal your ideas?
Nobody's going to steal your ideas. So it doesn't, I mean, I should say that you choose the people that you trust. And how do I know if I trust them? Well, since this particular one came by a referral, I knew that my screenwriting coach.
Like, what about someone like me? I don't know people like that, so how will I know that I made the right choice in going, like, finding a group?
So if you poke around online, and I'll also try to see if I can dig up. So there's a community online called Stage 32. Are you all familiar with this? Have you ever heard that one before? Stage 32. It's free to join, and it's full of all sorts of art, creative people, like producers, directors, screenwriters, actors, composers, all sorts of people from all over the world. And it's they join this community. They join it for free, and once they're there, they create their profile page, and they'll say, "Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a screenwriter living in Los Angeles." And once you figure out your profile page and you kind of develop a network by befriending other people on there, a lot of screenwriting groups get formed on there from people who are at different skill levels. So you can probably find a group that way. Yeah, there's a lot of trial and error. Like I was in the screenwriting group or my writers group. I was with them for about 5 years before I was finally like, I just don't like this group anymore. And then I had to leave.
Yeah. But I mean, and I think this is something that I say too. I mean, usually people, I mean, not to say that it doesn't happen, right? Sure, your things can get stolen. That's true, but it's really, 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 really rare. And I think also it's like, it's not your idea, it's the execution of your idea.
Agreed.
So it's not, you know, like because there's been 1,000 movies about like boy meets girl, girl meets girl, whatever, you know, like dog bites man. Like there's, you know, that it's how you tell it, and it's the execution of how you do the thing. It's not ultimately, sure, your idea is valuable, but that's not the artistry, and that's not the talent and the thing that's going to propel you in your career forward.
Yeah, for example, there are 1,000 movies out there that have the same idea of a retired bank robber wants to leave the job completely, but it's just one more bad guy hires him to rob a bank and pulls him back into the bank robbing business. And then everything goes horribly wrong. So that is just one idea. But the way that you express that is 1,000 different movies. Or, you know, in the horror movie genre, the couple goes to the lake, to, you know, the very remote lake cabin in the middle of the woods for a weekend away, and then bad things start to happen. That's just a general idea. And
Yeah.
there's 1,000 movies like that out there.
Like,
So,
I mean, to piggyback off that, right? It's like, that's Get Out. But like,
yeah.
Get Out is like something that has actually really never been seen before until, you know, last year or 2 years ago when it came out. But it wasn't that the idea was new. It was that the spin and the perspective on it was new, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the voice of the writer and filmmaker.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, yeah. Careful, but don't stress.
Yeah, and also in terms of, if I can guarantee you that the studios are not going to steal your idea. They're
I'm not talking
not.
about the studio. I'm talking about like writing groups. You know, writing groups.
So if you're worried about the writing groups or somebody in a writing group stealing your idea, you still have all of your drafts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have like draft dates and stuff, and you can use as evidence, because you would have to submit the script at a certain date and time, normally via email, because this is what I do with my writers group, is that the week before we meet on a Saturday. The week before, we have to upload our submissions into a folder online. And we have
I have Microsoft Office, so you know, like when you save a file, it has a date on it. Like that.
Mm-hmm. But if you were in a writer's group and you would still have to submit your script somehow via email or whatever, that would be your receipt. That would be your digital trail that you had the script, you wrote it, and you sent it via email to the rest of your writer's group. So if someone steals it from there, you can still say, I had this idea down way before you did.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, and sure, that's a pain in the butt, but hey, if somebody, you know, legitimately steals your idea and then goes and makes $25 million or something, or even $1 million, you know, like still probably worth pursuing it. I mean, like my favorite recent, although not in film, like intellectual property beef is, I guess there was somebody who tweeted out the line, "I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% that bitch." And that person who tweeted that out, it was liked by Lizzo, and I think she even retweeted it. And then, you know, whatever year or so later, that ends up in her song. It is definitely the marquee line of that song. And that, you know, that comedian came back and said, like, "I wrote that. That's my line." And she is now a credited writer on that song and getting royalties. So
Yeah.
hooray for her. But, you know,
Yeah.
that's like, you know, there are, if it's worth it, you'll pursue it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I know it's a common fear among newer writers, this fear that someone's going to steal my stuff. I you know, in the years that I've been at this for over 15 years. It's never happened to me, and I've never seen it happen around me. If you take any comfort at all in that.
I have a question. So when you submit the script to the studios, does it have to be copyrighted? And then, yeah, like, does it even make sense to copyright a script at all?
Like register it with Writers Guild?
Yes, with the Writers Guild.
Okay, I can absolutely talk about this. It may get really detail oriented and wonky, but I'll try to explain as best I can. You do not have to submit it with the Writers Guild. It's not going to help you unless you are a member of the Writers Guild. The Writers Guild registration is only going to help you in court if we got down that road. You would be, let's see, the Writers Guild registration stands up as evidence if it is to guild members who are alleging some impropriety happening. That's the only time the Writers Guild registration can be used as evidence. It's not going to help you in regular modern day legal court. So what will help you in modern day legal court is the Copyright Office, and that would be the Library of Congress. So and that.
So don't register my script to Writer Guild. So don't spend any more money on them.
I would not recommend it. Not at the level you're at. No, it's weird because I know every contest or competition that you enter, it says somewhere in there, we strongly recommend that you register your script with the Writers Guild. And I don't know why they do that. I don't know if I don't know why. You know, I mean, if you want a time stamp on it, you don't have to do that with the Writers Guild. You could mail a copy of it to yourself and just never open the envelope. And that would serve as official evidence because you sent it through a federal agency, the US Postal System. I'm not saying you do that either. I'm saying you should, like when I have a draft on my computer, it has a time date stamp on it from when I first created it. And that's all digital information. But the Library of Congress, that's where you would officially file for copyright. That would hold up in a court of law. That is considered legal evidence. That is considered a legal time date stamp. The other thing with the Writers Guild is that registration is only good for 10 years and then they destroy it. So you have to keep renewing your registration if you want. It's really a money-making thing for them. So whereas all you have to do is file it with the Copyright Office one time. You file one time, you pay one fee, it's good forever. So that's the difference between the Copyright Office with the Library of Congress and the Writers Guild. So
I see, thank you. Yeah.
Does that help, Austin?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I learned something new too. 'Cause I did register mine with them. How much is it with the Library of Congress? How much does that cost?
Gosh,
Wait,
I would have to look that up. I don't know it off the top of my
Is
head.
it more than 20?
It might be more than 20. It might be like 40 or something. But again, it's for life.
And you said if I mail a copy to myself, that also works too?
If you mail a copy to yourself, it does work, but it only works if you don't open the envelope.
Okay, that makes sense. Before.
Yeah. So you would mail a copy of it to yourself, don't open the envelope, put it in your closet, and then if it ever came down to where you needed to produce evidence in court, you would bring in the envelope, they would seal that, they would see that it's not opened and that it has a time date stamp on it of when it was processed through the US postal system, and that would serve as legal evidence. It's definitely almost an old-fashioned way of doing it, but it works.
yeah.
But
It looks
Any
like
other
somewhere between $35 and $55, just
oh, okay, there you go.
depending on, not sure.
Oh yeah, the way they those categories can be, because they were created so long ago. It's just like, is this a visual arts category? Is it something
Yeah.
else? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, is this a dance?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then
And there,
not to make like open this. Even I'm like, should I? No. Okay, no, don't.
no, feel free. No, it's all good.
Because yeah, I mean, you know, if you're really doing like a copyright claim, right? And I'm definitely not an expert in this, but there's more to it as well than like proving that you wrote this thing. It's like that the person had access and intent, I think.
That is correct. You have to, yeah, you have to prove.
Like you have to
Sorry?
prove that that person had access to your idea at the time that you're saying you wrote it, earlier than when they're saying they wrote it. And
How would they have access to it?
that's why it's like, okay, so even if you have a copy of your script that you mailed to yourself and it's dated 1982, you know, you have to prove that like Joe or Steven Spielberg got it in 1983 and then tried to like write the thing in 1987, you know, and that's E.T. or whatever. And like he stole your idea for E.T. And that he intentionally plagiarized your work. Like, because there's been cases where it's like, oh, this person did see it, but they don't recall like ever seeing it. So.
Yeah, and the few times that I see it online is normally a situation where a writer had his agent had submitted the script to the studio passed on it, and then 8 years later makes a vaguely similar idea. You know, like what we were talking about before, like, oh, I wrote a script about a cabin in the woods. I submitted it to Universal. They passed on it. Then all of a sudden, 5 years later, there's a movie coming out called Cabin in the Woods. They stole my idea. Whereas the Cabin in the Woods idea that I wrote and the Cabin in the Woods idea that Universal released are completely different. The only similarity is that it was based around a cabin in the woods. So if I wanted to press my case, I would have to file in federal court, and I would have to prove that Universal had access to my script because I submitted it to them on this day via my representation. And then you get really in the weeds where you have legal people saying, okay, we've read both scripts and here's where they're like, and here's where they're different. And it's a very long way from what I think you would ever encounter in your lives. So.
And then so just Vivian just messaged and she said that she's probably gonna go soon.
Oh, okay.
but so should we, I guess, because I mean, I guess she could do the revisions too and then send it back to us on Writer Duet. Like if she feels like it's or the formatting stuff and then send it to us, or should we just jet through it?
Well, it's about what do you want to do, Vivian? Do you want me just to export what I've done so far and then I can just email you that file?
I don't really have a preference. Like, I mean, there's not, like, is there even really a lot of formatting left to do? There's like, what, 2 pages left in the script?
Oh yeah, no, we can jam this out right now. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, hang on. Do-do-do. So, here. So, so yeah, this is kind of what I'm talking. Okay, so it's 6 pages, right, Vivian? Is that right?
Yeah.
Like that's okay. So this is not so bad. If you want, I'll send this to you, and if you want to go through and see if there's anything in here that you could maybe cut down, just to get this section back on page 5. Or if you want, because you have room to play, if there's anything in here that you kind of want to write about a little bit more, you can.
Okay,
So-
yeah, I'll take a look.
Okay. So to export this, you go down to, let's see, right here. There we go. I think it's export document. Okay. I'm going to export this as a PDF, but it would go like that. I think it would just be. This will always come up, and I would just hit maybe later.
Like, please, we could use money.
Yes, yes. And if you get to a point where you feel like you can throw them a few bucks, or if you feel like you're to a point where you can upgrade to the next level of paid membership, you can host more of your own projects than just the 3 that the free version allows you.
How much is like once again? Is it like a lot of money, huh? It's like 100 something.
For the next level of membership in Writer Duet?
Yeah, like instead of being a free member, after that it's like 100 and something. Is it?
I didn't look because I use Final Draft. I was just working with this one because I knew that it was free for the first 3 scripts in your portfolio. So that's why I picked this one, and it's fairly intuitive and user friendly.
Yeah, it seems actually quite like a lot better than the Celtex.
Yeah, and I also heard that I heard that Celtics or Celtics or whatever, I heard that they changed things so that what used to be free may not be offered for free anymore.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely, just in the little bit that I've been working with Writer Duet, I think it would absolutely fill all of your screenwriting needs.
Yeah, it's awesome. So it's for Plus, which is everything that's in the free unlimited projects and unlimited co-writers, it's $5. So, I mean,
$5 for what? So I
For-
missed that.
unlimited projects.
For where?
Writer Duet
$5?
per month.
Is it per month? Oh, so, okay.
So it's like a
That'd be,
$60 a year,
yeah, that's not bad.
right? That math, right? Yes.
I think so.
Math. Wait.
Yeah, okay, so I will go ahead and email this to you, Viv, or I'll send it to Kristen. Kristen can forward it along. And then if you have any other questions, I'm totally available all week because I know your deadline is Friday, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I also know that you had submitted your resume. And there's a couple of things that I'll just email Kristen about, who can then forward it on to you separately, about how you can maybe just clean that up a bit. It's not bad. It's just there's a different format that we could use that would be fine. So it won't take you at all very long at all to do.
Could I have your email too?
Sorry?
Can I have your email too?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, she usually forwards me stuff and then I'll send it on.
But yeah, if you want me to look at anything of yours, Aisha, just send it to Kristen and she can send it to me.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, and then I will stop sharing here. And there we all are. Whee! Whee! Okay.
Okay, well, that's cool. That was, I think, very, very useful as far as just the writer duet. And then, like you said, the kind of top things to look out for formatting is the left justified, the breaking up your action lines, don't gratuitously use your parents, number your pages, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, if you're using Writer Duet or Final Draft or whatever, they're going to automatically number it for you. So no big deal.
Use Writer Duet. Use it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'll also try to dig around online and come up with some screenwriting networks that are free to join, like Stage 32 and a couple of other things. And maybe if you start poking around in those communities, and you might be able to find writers group to join and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Because yeah, I mean, all the writers that I know are like, that's really where they get the most out of and feel like they progress the most, is like in groups like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's, you just have to find one that suits your particular style and personality. So it's not as though like the first one that you join may not be the right fit, you know, personality wise or skill wise or whatever. So you just got to keep trying until you find one that does.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool. All right.
Well, thank you so much, Amy.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. So I will see you all later. And thanks for letting me hang with you guys.
Bye.
Cool.
All right. Kristen, can you
Bye.
send it to me?
Do what?
Afterwards? Can you send it to me?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna stay on a bit longer just to
Oh,
see what else
Yeah,
there
no,
might
I'm the only one that's leaving. All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
no.
What? I'm sorry. So what did you ask, Aisha?
Ask them.
Hmm?
No, I didn't say nothing.
Oh, okay. I never.
Mhm.
Never mind. So yeah, Wednesday, I'm working on the cut for Vivian's project. I'm gonna work on the fight scene in the second half of the film. I don't remember who was on or who was not, but we're gonna be doing that. Well, I remember Casey was not there because you were in it. So yeah, we're gonna be doing that, and then hopefully that'll be in a relatively done place. And then I think I'll be kind of like, once that is in a relatively done place, it might not be done this week, it might be next week. But then I think I will sort of turn my attention towards moving Casey's piece a little bit more along. I know, you know, you're pushing forward at the pace that is the pace, and that's totally cool. But you know, then I can kind of like be helping a little bit more, like focused on your stuff.
Cool.
Because you know, I have stuff that I've said that I'll work on, and then I can also think about, and I know that Zen had said that she might have some things that she's already shot for her project that could potentially double in yours. And you guys, you know, I think you had connected when I forget what his name is at the moment, but that filmmaker that came in and talked about like personal perspective filmmaking.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there's some overlap there, but I know that she's pretty concentrated on her project, but again, there might be stuff that can kind of like double duty and like make sense kind of overlap. And I think that would be kind of cool because I think you are in a lot of ways like working on similar things, but just from your own personal perspectives, which is cool. So yeah, there's that. And we'll kind of like just move forward from there. There's nobody that's interested in HCPR here, right? Like I have 4 people on my list to be updating about like class for West LA. I'm trying to get in touch with Laura and just see what's going on with them. But if there's anybody else who's interested in, you know, starting classes, you can always let me know, and I'll like can fold you in to that. Other than that, I think that's it for me. Anything since I didn't really like check in with you at the beginning, Aspen, anything new or questions or excitements? I did watch the music video, so that looks good. Thank you for sending it. That's another thing too that I can look at and think about, if there's anything like that that can double duty. Since you had mentioned that, perhaps.
Yeah. Do you have any notes on the music video?
I did not have any notes. I just kind of like watched it. So,
Right.
If you specifically, or next time when I'm like thinking about it more, I can.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I was wondering about. I didn't ask that her, but I was reading one script. And it was a very difficult script to read because there were a lot of different scenes. So like the way it was happening, there was 5 different archetypes of one person, and then the hero was kind of, you know, in very in a lot of distress. So what was happening is that we had about 4 to 5 different scenes, and the scenes would constantly cut back between each other from like scene 1 to scene 2. And we also had some scenes where like 2 people, right, so 2 people had a dialogue, and those dialogues were shoot in different locations. So when I was reading the script, I mean, I understood that, but a lot of people just could not comprehend that. So I was wondering, like, is there a proper way of doing that, or to kind of ease it so that people would understand what's happening?
It's funny because I definitely asked that question like right before you got on.
Oh, damn.
But I mean, and so I'm actually recording this so we can, you know, you can go back and see what her response was. But essentially what it was because I had that same question, basically. I was like, you know, I was asking her like, oh, is there some style guide that we can refer to for tricky things like that, like intercutting and that kind of thing. And her thing was like, those types of scenes are, because they're like complicated and not really standard, there isn't a standard. So as long as it comes across on the page, it's like, she was like, there are things that you can refer to. And maybe that's something I'll follow up with her to like ask her what kind of style guides that maybe you could look at.
Right.
But yeah, it was just like, I think in that scenario, it's about like clarifying, just making sure that a reader really clearly understands what is trying to come across. So like, if people are saying they're confused and they don't get it, then like revising that until like 90, because you know, not 100% of people are not going to get it, but like maybe 95 or 98% of people should probably get it.
Right.
You know, so that kind of thing.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. It is complicated.
Yeah. And then that clarification, and I mean, I think that's kind of like the writing process, right? And that's where like writers groups and having people read your scripts and giving you feedback is like very helpful, right? Because then it's like, oh, like people aren't getting this, and like if you are getting notes that are similar, like I wouldn't say like, and I think maybe we talked about this a little bit. It's like the art of like receiving feedback and addressing notes is like a skill that's important to develop, because sure, people might say something wild to you, and you're like, what are they talking about? But then if 5 people are saying that same thing to you, it's kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe that's something that I need to figure out. Like it's not coming across, or it's confusing, or
Right.
there's some other solution to this creative problem, whether it be like technical in the sense of like how to convey it on a page, or like actually narratively, like, oh, people are not responding to like when, you know, the fifth aspect of this character like kills the third aspect or whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah. It
And
was
so
kind of.
it's
It
a
was.
script that you wrote, or
No, I didn't. I didn't write that. I was just talking to one guy. Well, we had like a small group of people, and we were just talking about possible collaboration stuff. There was one screenwriter, and he had like a few short scripts. So I was just trying to work that with him, but it was very difficult, and it was also kind of funny because he said that it's a comedy,
Mhm.
kind of like an experimental comedy, and he said that he really likes Woody Allen and other I forgot what other filmmakers he mentioned, but I understood the scripts, and I saw that it's kind of Woody Allenish funny, if you know what I mean.
It's like
It's
dry and erotic.
yeah, it's very dry. So all of the people that read the script, they were like, wait, it's a comedy.
They didn't like, yeah, they didn't get
Yeah,
it. Oh,
nobody understood it. Everybody was like, "What? Like, what is it?"
this isn't funny.
Yeah,
So it's like, this is hilarious.
yeah. So that was kind of funny.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's cool. See, I mean, and that's what it is, right? With in terms of finding like people who have the same sensibilities as you.
right.
So like you can read that, and yeah, like you're saying, you know, maybe there's ways to make it more clear and convey to different people, but like
Yeah,
sometimes that's just how it is with creative stuff. Like some people get you and some people don't. You know what I mean?
right.
So
Yeah, yeah. I see. Definitely.
but yeah, like I don't know. I would have to kind of see it to offer more specific feedback, but yeah, like
Um,
cutting
I mean,
between stuff and multiple characters who are potentially portrayed by the same actor, or like multiple personalities, one character. I mean, you know, you can totally
mm,
do it.
I mean, at this point, nobody's even working on this project because nobody was really interested. So at this point, it's like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought it's kind of, I don't know, funny.
Yeah.
I was trying, you know what? I was trying to break it down. I was trying to break it down, and I was trying to put at least some kind of scheduling for the scenes and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I was going mad crazy because even though I understood what was happening, for me it was like um, really, well, it's really hard to like put it on the schedule because you have cuts between the scenes every, I don't know, third of a page
Oh, yeah,
or every half of the page, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so maybe like for the breakdown, you could like rearrange the scenes that are like all in the same time period, in the same time place with, or the same place with all the same actors. I don't know how many multiple actors there might be, but you know,
Okay, yeah, that would actually make so much more sense.
like do a linear version of the script that's like,
Mm,
oh, okay, this is the time, the actual time frame order that happens. It happens
yeah,
in, and then
that's what I should have asked him to do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So and honestly, that might be helpful for him too. You know.
yeah, yeah. I'll mention that if I ever talk to him again.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And also, I checked the Actors Fund,
Hmm.
and it says that I have to have at least 5 years of experience to apply.
Is it 5 years?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I thought it was less than that. I'm sorry.
No worries. I also checked other stuff, and I finally got some kind of letter from EDD, and you know what they said? They
Mm.
said that the documents that I sent, um, they aren't satisfied for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, I literally sent like a picture of ID, social security, and the green card.
Mm.
It's
They
like,
don't. Do they give you any kind of number? Because usually when there's something like that, there's like a number to follow up on, or like,
right, I am supposed to have this number, but I haven't received that. Like, I checked all of my letters, and I can't find it anywhere. And then I tried to call them, and of course, like the main line is like never working. And somebody posted like a different number of the EDD on our department group, and I called that, and somebody answered it, and they were like, ask questions and stuff, and they were like, yeah, somebody from EDD will contact you in like a few days.
like as long as you start talking to somebody, like it
Yeah.
actually does kind of like move. At least that's been my
Okay.
experience. I would say if you don't hear from, like keep that number, because
Yeah.
I had that, like, I don't know where the number, I was gonna say like maybe, except for I think mine was like the family leave that I had a number for. But yeah,
Yeah.
like, keep that number. But like
Okay.
as long as you can get in touch with somebody, you can at
Yeah.
least, then you have a line, because like
Right.
otherwise
What happened with UPS?
it's impossible.
What
Um,
happened with UPS?
oh yeah, so I have a Zoom interview with UPS on Thursday. And then I have another interview tomorrow at some kind of